So I wanted to address the big New York Times article that came out on Sunday, on September 11th, Top of the Fold, which a lot of people are talking about really everywhere. They definitely constructed this article to be a big topic of conversation. The way that we here at Jew in the City try to approach the Orthodox community is to both ask for fairness, the same type of fairness that any minority community would want, to be able to be appreciated for our differences, to be able to celebrate our culture, but also to have high standards of accountability for ourselves, and to recognize that, to be human beings in the world, to be people who live as citizens in the world with other people. There are expectations that exist, but really it should come from within. Our work at Jew in the City started off really more with a PR angle. There was a lot of misinformation, misunderstandings that were fed to me through media growing up as a non-Orthodox Jew, as a proud Jew, mind you, but as someone who had never met Orthodox Jews personally. And when there was all the beauty that I saw when I met people, when I actually met Orthodox Jews, had really been kept from me. I had only seen the worst stories, the worst cases in movies, TV shows, news headlines. As our work at Jew in the City developed, this idea of simply being about PR and asking the world to, see us as we see ourselves, expanded into dealing with people who had a negative experience in the Orthodox world. These are our Mako members. We've dealt with hundreds of people from the Haredi or ultra-Orthodox world in almost 7 years now. The stories are basically what we would expect people with unhappy childhoods to have, which is that toxic individuals, dysfunctional individuals lead to unhappy lives. And we're doing our best to help them separate their own lived dysfunctional experiences from the beauty that Judaism can have when it's lived in a healthy way. And we're also trying to explain that dynamic to the world through our media channels, which we've now named Keter. But then we have this final branch of Jew in the City that was sort of operating behind the scenes for a while, and we launched more officially in the last year, called Tikkun. And Tikkun means to repair. Tikkun is a recognition that if we want to look good, we have to be good. And we're doing a lot of the work at Tikkun behind the scenes. We're doing a lot of work at Tikkun, not really doing any of the heavy lifting ourselves, but more behind the scenes to motivate leadership, motivate experts in different areas to really live up to our values. We really have a lot of beautiful values. There are some challenging sources in the Torah, but overall we have beautiful values. And so in response to this New York Times op-ed, there, first and foremost, and I put this high up in the op-ed, and of course, depending on how you've read it, you have a different opinion if I focus on it or not, enough or not, but I said, it's an uncomfortable read because it is highlighting some real shortcomings that Jewish children are missing in these communities, and we owe our children safety, and the Gemara, the Talmud says that a parent has to teach their child a trade lest they become a thief. It's very clear that your kid has to learn how to grow up and be a mensch, to take care of himself, or else he could resort to bad things. At the same time, we pointed out that there is so much carefulness in the media now about dealing with minority communities, especially those under attack. I pointed out that the lab leak theory was quashed by basically all major media outlets because fear that it would endanger the Asian community that was already in a lot of trouble as coronavirus was spreading around the world. They had a real concern about their safety. We've seen similar shift in reporting on the Black community. There's a fear of always reporting Black men as criminals, that this could endanger them in terms of the police. There's a sense that always showcasing Muslims as terrorists could increase Islamophobia attacks on Muslims. These are concepts that are sort of just in the world and accepted. Hopefully there's still accountability for these communities, and yet there's a sense of dealing with them carefully that doesn't seem to exist for the Orthodox community, especially the Hasidic community, who is literally getting attacked regularly in the very place where, the New York Times did this story, framing it in a way where they decided to discuss the funds over a 4-year period. Citing funds over a 4-year period is a completely arbitrary number. They could have cited funds over a 10-year period. The numbers would have been even larger. The number 1 billion sounds very big. If any funds were used inappropriately or in a dishonest way, that's a huge problem. And we're supposed to stand for honesty. The Torah says distance yourself from a dishonest thing. But at the same time, to frame it in a way, during a time of inflation, during a time of economic unrest, of Jews as sort of like the sucker of public funds, of taxpayer money, it really sort of feeds into age-old anti-Semitic tropes. Taking pictures of random Hasidic kids on the street. You don't know their backstory. There are certainly abused Hasidic kids in that community. I know them. I work with the adult versions of them. But to just take random Hasidic kids when they're grimacing or looking unhappy, and to sort of put this a judgment onto the child, which the photographer is doing with these pictures. If we've imagined another minority community being treated in this way, you know, grimacing for a moment, and now suddenly all the backstory we tell ourselves about how miserable they must be, that's just things that wouldn't be done to other people. And so I think that, like, we can have a complicated response to an article that has a lot of different layers to it. First and foremost, we need to live up to our values, and we have beautiful values of honesty, of safety, of education. And where the community is falling short, the only response can be to correct those problems. And that's, really the message of our Tikkun branch. And thank God we are having really positive conversations with a lot of people in the community, a lot of leadership in the community, because again, you can't look good if you're not being good. And it's very simple. But if there is new sensitivity to minority groups, especially minority groups under attack, we just want the same treatment that everyone else gets. And we really want people to understand that our religious Jews are literally under attack right now. And so representation matters, media reporting matters. And that's not to say that these stories shouldn't come out. Investigative journalists have a job to do, but how is the story framed? Is it, framed in a way that seems more inciting? Is, dipping into anti-Semitic tropes when it didn't have to go in that direction? And so I hope that as the story goes around, as you read about it, as you talk about it, please try to bring some of this nuance to the people that you're meeting, because it's on a lot of people's minds right now. And as we know from history, when there's economic rough times, Jews are the first scapegoat. And I really hope that this New York Times article, didn't set up more violence against Jews. And I also hope that the community will take this message to heart, and recognize that the only way to look good is to live up to who we are as Jews. So please try to spread this type of nuance. I think nuance really in every conversation is where the conversation should be, but especially in an issue like this, we have to be clear and unequivocal about our responsibilities as a community, and also ask the media and reporters to treat us in the same way they would treat any other minority group. Okay, have a good night.